Memories of special events, births, weddings, birthdays, Christmases, all filled with my mother's laughter. I think that's what I'll miss the most, her laughter. And I stop and think how lucky I am to have known Kathy, my mother. You see, I believe that people come into our life and out of our lives for a reason. The universe puts challenges in our way to teach us to be a more perfect human, but then also puts people in our lives to help us tackle those challenges. One of the most important things that my mother taught me was strength, and I feel her today telling me to be strong. The last conversation I had with my mother was at the hospital the day before she passed. I'd asked the room full of people if I could have a moment alone with my mom. I was pretty much losing it. I knew the end was near, and I wanted to thank her in private. I thanked her for being so strong. I thanked her for choosing to keep me at such a young age and apologized for not being as strong as her. She put her hand on mine and said, "I love you." These were the last words my mother spoke to me. So I stand here today trying to be strong like my mother taught me. Strength. That is what I'll remember the most about my mother, Kathy. She was the strongest person I knew. Many of you may know, but at 14, when she found out she was pregnant, she had the strength to keep her baby and become a mother. And when she was diagnosed with cancer, she did not cry. She walked to the elevator and said, "I'll show them." And she did, lasting almost a year longer than anyone else gave her. The first memory I have of my mother is standing at the foot of the bed when my mother gave birth to my sister Jessica. She was so brave. My mother gave birth at home with no drugs and no doctors, so she could be surrounded by family, and my sister Jessica would come into the world surrounded by love. She died at home doing the same thing, surrounded by family. Just like she lived her life, she understood that family was the most important thing, and she would do anything to make sure her family was taken care of. Speaking of my sister Jessica, she loved you very much and always had your back. She sometimes would tease me and remind me that you were planned and I was a mistake. Devin, you are the first grandchild. Your grandmother and you have a special bond because you were the oldest. As your mom pointed out to you, your grandmother was in the room the day you were born, and you were in the room the day she passed. This is the circle of life, and something special between the two of you. She was proud of your accomplishments and trusted you. She also likes your boyfriend Sergio a lot. Maybe too much. But I speak for the entire family when I say thank you for being so strong and helpful to your grandfather in this difficult time. Jean, you know she thought of you as another daughter. Every time the Mamas and Papas came on, she reminded me of the two of you drinking chi-chis and dancing around the apartment. She never forgot you and always loved you. Destiny. I believe Grandma saw herself the most in you. She often would tell me how proud she was of your work ethic, and which your grandmother also prided in having. She mostly was so impressed and would brag constantly about how well you took care of your brother. When we found out that you were going to have a baby, she told me she's not worried because you had been such an amazing big sister to Connor. And boy, did she love your son Cash, her first great-grandchild. Connor, the boy. Grandma loved you so much, buddy. You were the only boy, and she knew it. I want you to know that you meant a lot to her, and although you would not keep your hands off her walls, she loved your hugs. Raylene, your grandmother would light up when she talked about you. She was so proud of your brave commitment to the United States military. Just like her father and brother before you, your bravery and strength to join the military and protect your family meant you were strong. And she had taught you that. And Tawami, you will always be the baby. The way you took care of Grandma and Grandpa when they were sick was absolutely amazing. I'm so proud of how strong you are. Many times adults around you are losing it, and you just stay strong, and you always make sure your Grandma and Grandpa eat. The last morning that my mom was home, she wasn't feeling well, and we were upstairs, and you were taking care of her, like you always do. She wanted to give you her cherry earrings. I'm so glad you got them and you're wearing them today. And I want you to remember later in life, when someone cut you off in traffic and you flip them off, your grandma taught you that. Cammie, you are not here, but I want you to know that my mother loved you as her own. You know she chose to have a relationship with you, and that makes you part of the family. Ladies, please follow in your grandmother's footsteps and stay strong. The family needs you at this time. I don't pretend to know the meaning of life, nor do I truly know what happens after we leave this earth. But I do know that families are meant to progress and advance from the sacrifice of our ancestors. So I hope you take your grandmother's strength and move the family forward in your own special way. When my grandmother Engebretson passed away, I went into the garage that was converted into a studio apartment. This is where I started my life with my mother and father. I took a picture of that room that day, and I keep it in the nightstand to remember the very humble beginnings in which my mother came from. As a single mother of two at 20, I remember that my mother worked in a cold factory packing apples in Washington. I remembered that my mother slept on the couch so my sister and I could have our own rooms. And I remembered that my mother stayed at State Fund from 1982 to 2016. She did these things for her family. She was the rock. She sacrificed so her children and grandchildren could have a better life. And it's up to all of us to move the ball forward and continue to grow and prosper as a family. Of course, my mother was not alone. She had by her side, most of her life, the love of her life, Rob. For those of you that do not know the story of how they met, my mom was a waitress at Spires, and Rob drove a truck for Intiman's Bakery. Rob was known by the waitresses as the Muffin Man. Rob would come in every night and do what Rob does best, flirt with the waitresses. One night, my mom had a handful of chocolate kisses in her pocket, and another waitress dared her to offer the Muffin Man a kiss. So my mom walked up and leaned over the counter and whispered, "Do you want a kiss?" Well, Rob was never going to turn down a kiss from a hot blonde, and he said, "Hell yeah." When my mom pulled away and handed him a chocolate kiss, he was not going to take that as the end-all be-all. So he asked her out. To say Rob ended up being the love of my mother's life is an understatement. Anyone that spent time with Kathy and Rob knew two things. They would be together forever, and you better get out of the house on Sunday morning. Rob and Kathy traveled all over the United States, as you saw in the pictures. Trips that normal people would find boring and weird, they found exciting. From the Bob Wire Museum to Graceland, to some random cave full of bats on the side of the road. They were happiest when they were on vacation together, just doing random stuff. Living their life on the West Coast, they had wanted to see fall. They took 3 weeks off to go back east and wait for the leaves to change. Devin was so lucky to go with them, and the rest of us were so lucky not to have to go with them. Even when my mom got sick, she made sure she found time to take vacation. Taking me to the Grand Canyon for the first time, and taking Jessica and Paul to Morro Bay just a few weeks ago. This summer we went to Yellowstone, and there were several other trips planned during this time. We actually have a trip to the Sequoias planned just next week. Although my mom won't be there in person, her spirit will be with us. To my mom's co-workers in the office, she may have complained about her job, but she secretly loved it. You were her family away from home. I remember growing up, she knew the exact day she was going to retire, because her and Rob were going to travel in their trailer. But she kept pushing that day back because of things that happened with Rob's health. But I secretly think she was actually just torn. She liked work and was not afraid of a hard day of work. I think it gave her a sense of accomplishment. And unfortunately, she thought, well, I'll have plenty of time to travel later. When writing this eulogy, I had a lot of time to think about the past. Why did my mom keep me? Why did my mom die so young? And why did she not get to enjoy her retirement and see the world with Rob? I'm angry that she was taken too soon. I'm angry that she didn't get to see me marry the love of my life, Justin. But then I stop, and I remember that things happen for a reason. My grandmother Stein died at 63, and my mother died at 62, both way too young. But I know now that my grandmother Stein's passing brought my sister Canny into our life. Canny and I have talked and agreed this not only saved her life, but she would not have been a part of my life had my grandma not died when she did. My mother knew the end was near. She didn't share it with us, maybe to protect us. But we now know that the doctors had warned her the end was near. On the Friday before she died, at 11 o'clock at night, my mother texted me, "Good night, I love you." I texted, "I love you too." This was the last text I ever got from my mother. And it reminds me to not wait. Tell people that you love them now, and tell them often. So I ask, maybe my mom died when she did to bring her family together. If you think about it, she was surrounded by her brother, her best friend, her husband, her grandchildren, and her beloved daughter. Maybe this was her way of making sure we remembered her strength, but also her commitment to her family. Maybe this was her way to remind us that tomorrow is not promised. So I ask everyone in this room, don't postpone your retirement and take that trip. If you see a sign on the road that says there's some weird shit up ahead, pull over and enjoy that weird shit. It's not the destination. We stand in a cemetery. We all know the destination. But it's about the journey and taking that journey with your family. So I leave you with this. After I'm done speaking, we are going to play one of my mom's favorite songs. I ask that you turn to a loved one in the room. Maybe someone that you have a beef with. Maybe someone you haven't seen in a while. And hug them. Hug them hard. And don't let go.